Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The mug hit his phone before I even felt my arm move. My name is Kate. I was 31 the night I did that. Porcelain cracked, the screen splintered, and my husband jerked off the couch. He grabbed my wrist too late, his fingers closing on air. For a second, I just stared at the broken glass and waited for my life to blink. "What the hell, Kate?" His voice scraped through the living room. I pulled my hand back and felt my pulse hammer against my skin. He looked from the mug to the ruined phone like he was counting damage. I could not tell if he was worried about me or the secret. Either way, his eyes would not meet mine, and that told me enough. I had already seen the messages. That was the part that mattered. 10 minutes earlier, I had stood over that same phone, breathing too hard. The preview had flashed on the lock screen, just a single line. "Room is ready, use the side entrance." My thumb knew his passcode before my brain decided anything, and that choice would haunt me later. Now with the screen dead, those words lived only in my head. "I saw her texts," I finally got out, my voice low and tight. I pushed the phone toward him with one finger, like it was contaminated. "You told her you loved her and you could not talk because I was home." My throat burned on the last word, like I was the problem in that sentence. He blinked hard once, like he had taken a punch he did not expect. "Who are you talking about?" He rubbed his face, stalling for time. "There is no her. You are twisting something that is not what you think." I laughed short and sharp, because nothing sounds guiltier than that line. If he had denied it clean, I might have paused, but he fumbled instead. I said, and watched his shoulders tense on that single letter. Just an initial, right, nice and vague. I stepped closer until we were almost chest to chest, breathing the same charged air. "You booked a hotel, you talked about a room, you wrote you love her." Each example landed between us like a stone, and I waited for him to reach for even one. He did not reach. He moved back a step and glanced down the hallway. That tiny look toward the kids' rooms hurt worse than anything he had typed. He wanted the fight quiet, contained, something we could pretend never happened. "You went through my phone while I was asleep," he said finally. Like that was the real crime, not whatever he had hidden behind an initial. "Do not flip this on me." I felt my voice climb despite myself. I wanted to stay calm, to sound measured, to be the reasonable one. Instead, my words came out fast, every syllable edged. "You do not text hotel doors to coworkers, Evan." His name snapped out of me, hard and unfamiliar, like I was talking to a stranger. He raked his hand through his hair, eyes squeezed shut for a moment. "Will you please lower your voice?" he muttered, glancing at the hallway again. That careful tone, that quiet plea, set my teeth on edge. He sounded more worried about the kids waking than about our marriage detonating. I felt something in me tilt, like I had stepped off a ledge and noticed too late. "Answer me and I will lower it." My hands shook, but I did not hide them. "Who is she, and why are you meeting her in a hotel on Friday nights?" He opened his mouth, shut it, then looked toward the kitchen like help might appear. The clock ticked loud in the silence between us, marking each second he stayed quiet. Every one of those seconds pushed me closer to a decision I could not undo later. "There are things I cannot talk about yet," he said. He leaned on the back of the couch, knuckles whitening, like any wrong move would crack him. "It is not what you think, but it is not only my business." That line landed worse than any confession, because it came with a wall. I heard what he thought he was saying, and I heard what my fear translated. In my head, that hotel door became a body pressed against his. That initial became a woman who knew his tired secrets better than I did. That withdrawal from our account became dinner and wine and privacy. I could not unsee the version I had built, not while he kept me outside. I felt my nails bite into my palm and welcomed the sting, because at least that pain made sense. "If you are protecting her, you are not protecting me." I heard my own voice shift, colder, more controlled, and that scared me. "We share a bed, bank accounts, children, and you still have someone else in your phone." He flinched at the word children, like I had slapped him in public. Part of me wanted to stop, the rest wanted to see everything burn. The floor creaked down the hall and both our heads snapped that way. A small shadow paused at the corner, then retreated fast at our faces. We stood frozen, like any movement would drag the kids into this mess. Evan swore under his breath and scrubbed his hands over his eyes. For a moment we were just parents who had gone too loud, and that hurt. Whoa. RSE. I am going to sleep in the room with them tonight. He grabbed his pillow from the couch with quick jerky movements. You are not in a state where we can talk, and I will not keep yelling near them. He headed for the hallway, not looking at me, not waiting for my answer. Every step away felt like a verdict, like he had chosen distance over explanation. If you walk away right now, you are admitting it. The words came out calm, almost gentle, and that scared me more than shouting. He stopped with his hand on the doorframe, back turned, shoulders tight. For 1 second, I thought he might turn around and throw everything on the table. Instead, he shook his head once and disappeared down the hall, taking the last bit of doubt with him. The house went quiet in a way that pressed on my eardrums. I looked at the broken phone on the coffee table, the cracked glass catching faint light. My reflection stared back in tiny warped fragments, each piece angry and certain. I knew I had crossed a line with that passcode and the mug. But I also knew I was not done, because if he would not hand me the truth, I would drag it out myself. I pressed my ear to their door before my hand even knew why. Soft whispers, the rustle of blankets, his low murmur asking about nightmares. Part of me wanted to walk in and rip that quiet apart. Instead, I stood there, nails digging into my palm, listening like a stranger at my own wall. I walked away before my rage scared them more than any bad dream. I went straight for his work bag because I already knew I would. The zipper rasped open and my stomach clenched like I had swallowed ice. Laptop, wallet, a folded stack of receipts bound with a thin band. I pulled the computer out and set it on the table with shaking hands. I knew exactly how many lines I was crossing, and I kept going anyway. The login screen glowed and waited like it was judging me. I tried the one password we shared for streaming and bills first. The desktop opened in an instant and something in me dropped through the floor. I had hoped it would stop me, that I would hit a locked door. Instead, the universe handed me the master key and watched what I did next. My fingers went right to the mail icon like they had a script. Search bar, one letter, the same one that had burned into my brain earlier. A list of exchanges popped up, timestamps stacked like falling tiles. Nothing romantic in the subject lines, just short bland phrases that hid more than they revealed. Inside each message though, the careful language made my blood crawl. Same spot, back entrance this time. Use cash, no questions at the front. Wait until she leaves the house. Every line looked like logistics for an affair or a crime, nothing else. I read them twice, then 3 times, trying to make them into something harmless. There were attachments tucked into a few threads and I opened those next. A reservation confirmation with his full name and a single night booked. A blurry photo of a nondescript door with a number, taken too close. A screenshot of a map with a pin near a motel off the highway. I did not need anyone to underline what my brain already screamed. One message mentioned a transfer. Pulled it out today, do not use the card. I switched tabs and logged into our account before the fear could breathe. A withdrawal stared back at me, same day, just under the limit that triggers alerts. He knew exactly how much he could pull without me getting a notification. I forwarded everything to myself and cleared the send field after each one. My inbox filled with copies of his secrets while he slept down the hall. It felt like stuffing stolen goods into my own closet and locking the door. I told myself I was preserving evidence, not hoarding pain. Looking back, I know I was arming myself for a battle I had already chosen. My phone buzzed on the table and I flinched hard. Jenna's name lit up with a simple line. Are you okay? Call me. I hit video before I could talk myself out of dragging someone in. Her face appeared, hair messy, eyes instantly sharp when she saw mine. What happened? Her voice dropped like the floor had vanished under us both. I flipped the camera and showed the laptop screen with one open message. She inhaled once slow, and I watched her glance move over the words. That is not friendly, she muttered, jaw tight, gaze darkening with every line. I wanted her anger almost as much as I wanted proof. You see it right, I am not imagining this. The words came out thin, like I needed a referee for my own life. She nodded once, no hesitation. He is meeting someone, he knows it is wrong or he would not hide it. Her certainty slid into me, steady and warm, drowning the last tiny voice asking for patience. Screenshot everything, she went on, leaning closer to the screen. Times, amounts, locations, do not tell him you saw it yet. The instructions hit my brain like marching orders. RS simple and brutal. I started capturing every email, every detail that hinted at concealment. Each image stored on my phone felt like a brick in the wall between us. I ended the call because my hands would not stop moving. Next came his messages, the ones backed up to the cloud I should not have opened. I searched for that same initial and another chain surfaced, shorter and rougher. Ring me when she is not around. My line is not safe, use this app instead. He had written that plain as day, and my chest squeezed so hard I had to sit. I installed the mentioned app before my conscience caught up. Logged in with the same email he always used when he wanted everything in one place. For a second nothing appeared and I thought I had hit a dead end. Then a hidden folder blinked to life, messages dated over weeks. He had moved their talks off the main grid like he was burying a body. There were no names there, only initials and short bursts. Arrived, he is close. She cannot know, not yet. I will cover this one, just stay put. Every line fed the story I had already built, the one where I was the fool at home. One thread mentioned a police report and my brain snagged hard on that. A case number, a court date, words like order and violation. For a heartbeat I hesitated, the picture tilting slightly in another direction. It hinted at danger, at someone who needed protection from more than gossip. But then I saw my own address typed in one message about where not to show up. Keep him away from the house, she will notice. That sentence burned worse than any talk about hotel doors. Whoever this mystery person was, my home was part of the map. They were planning around me like I was an obstacle, not a partner. Any softer explanation drowned under the roar of that single line. I stood up too fast and the chair scraped across the floor. In the hallway, the door to the kids' room shifted a little. I froze, heart slamming, waiting for a small voice or a question. Nothing came, just the faint rustle of turning bodies and a soft exhale. They slept while I watched our life unravel on a screen inches from my face. My reflection stared back at me in the dark laptop frame. Eyes swollen, jaw clenched, mouth pulled tight like it belonged to someone else. I barely recognized the person willing to spy like this. At the same time, I felt strangely steady, like this version of me had always been waiting. Once trust snapped, there was no graceful half measure left to try. I opened a blank note and started a list. Dates, places, money amounts, any piece that looked like a pattern. It felt clinical and vicious at the same time. I was building a case, not trying to understand a husband. I would not admit that difference until much later when it was useless to do it. Somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning, I checked the front door. The lock sat exactly how he had left it earlier. I turned it again anyway, just to feel something fall into place by my choice. Paranoia flickered with each small sound outside, every car that slowed on the street. I kept picturing another vehicle parked nearby, watching our house while I hunted inside. My phone lit the room again with Jenna's name. You need someone who already knows a lawyer, her message read. She followed with a number and a single comment. Specializes in this kind of thing, do not wait. The word wait hit me harder than the word lawyer because I realized I had no intention of doing that. I added the contact, fingers moving faster now that vengeance had a shape. There was a dizzy thrill under the panic, a rush I hated even as I leaned into it. Combining fear with certainty can feel almost like power. Looking back, I think that was the moment I stopped investigating and started preparing to strike. The difference matters, but at 3 in the morning it all felt like survival. I shut the laptop only when my eyes blurred and lines doubled. The room spun a little when I stood, muscles stiff from hours hunched forward. On the couch, the broken device still lay where I had left it earlier. Spiderweb cracks stretched across the surface, catching stray light in sharp, jagged shapes. It looked exactly like what I had just done to us, only I still believed I was fixing something. I slipped my own phone under my pillow when I finally crawled into bed. Every screenshot, every copied message, every note waited there like loaded bullets. I listened for his footsteps, half expecting him to appear in the doorway. The silence lasted until my body finally gave in and shut down. By dawn, I had all the proof I thought I needed, and none of the answers that actually mattered. I dialed the lawyer's number before anyone else woke up. The phone rang twice, my heart pounded like it wanted out. I gave the short version once she answered, no pauses for shame. Husband, secret messages, hidden cash, hotels. I stacked the words fast. On the our end, someone started sketching the outline of an exit. She talked about accounts first, not feelings. Pull records, copy everything, watch for sudden transfers. Her voice stayed calm while my mind raced ahead to courtrooms. Do not tip your hand yet, let him think nothing changed. That line stuck because it gave me a role instead of just pain. I ended the call, then walked down the hall on quiet feet. From their room I heard soft snoring and his low murmur. I pictured him lying between them, arms around both, breathing slow. The same man I was preparing to drag through a legal war. I turned away before that image could soften anything I had decided. In the kitchen, I opened our joint banking app with a thumbprint. Every transaction looked normal at first glance, the usual bills and groceries. Once I saw the cash from yesterday though, I could not unsee it. I screenshotted balance pages, credit history, anything that might matter later. It felt like raiding a house while the owner slept in the next room. He walked in a little while later, rubbing his neck. Hey, his voice carried that tentative sound people use near wild animals. I poured cereal for the kids and kept my back turned. He moved around me, careful not to brush my arm. We performed family, both of us hitting marks, waiting for the curtain to drop. Can we talk tonight? He asked quietly once they ran off. I stared at the countertop until my eyes watered from not blinking. There is nothing left to talk about, I answered, words slow and sharp. You already made your choice, I am just catching up. He flinched like I had thrown something heavy, and I watched without stepping closer. After he left for work, I opened our messages with his mother. My thumb hovered over the paperclip icon for half a second. Then I attached image after image, every piece I had collected. I think you should see what your son has been doing, I wrote. I hit send and felt my chest tighten because there was no undo button. I did not stop with her. Next came his brother. Then my own sister. I pushed the same file to every contact who mattered in our orbit. If I was wrong, I was ruining him. If I was right, I was building witnesses. My phone lit up almost immediately with his mother's name. The call buzzed in my hand until voicemail caught it. She tried again, I let that one die too. I did not want to hear anyone ask for patience for him. I wanted the world around us to tilt the same direction I had chosen. Evan's name finally appeared on the screen in all caps. I watched it blink, then answered after the third ring. What did you send my mom? His breathing came out loud and uneven. Evidence, I replied, keeping my tone flat, my grip tight. If you were proud of your messages, you would have shown her yourself. You are dragging everyone into something you do not understand. His voice cracked on that last word and it almost reached me. Then explain it, I shot back. Right now, no riddles. Silence stretched long enough that I heard a car horn through his window. When he finally spoke again, he picked the worst option. I cannot yet. 3 short words, no excuse attached, no new detail offered. My vision blurred with sudden fury, so hot it felt clean. Then start packing a bag, I answered. You are not sleeping here tonight. I hung up before he could plead, because pity would only slow me down. The rest of the afternoon passed like a countdown. I gathered documents into one folder labeled with just his name. Printed copies in case something mysteriously vanished later. Moved a small amount out of our account into the old one under my maiden name. Each action felt ruthless and practical, which was easier than feeling hurt. Jenna dropped by after work with her hair still up. She took one look at the stack on the table and exhaled hard. So this is really happening, she murmured, running a hand along the papers. This is happening, I confirmed, swallowing down the metallic taste in my mouth. Her eyes softened, but there was approval there and I grabbed onto that. You want company when you tell him, she asked. I pictured the kids standing between us while adults hurled accusations. No, I want you on standby if I need a place later. She nodded once and put her phone on loud on the table. Knowing I had a fallback made me braver than I should have been. He came through the door earlier than usual that evening. Tie gone, sleeves rolled, face drawn tight from whatever happened at work. He scanned the room and spotted the folder right away. His shoulders drooped like he had been expecting it all day. For a second we just looked at each other, two people who recognized the end. You sent those to my mother, to my brother, to your sister. He said their titles like charges in a courtroom. They deserve to know who they have been defending online, I answered. If you wanted privacy, you should not have built a second life. My voice sounded calm to my own ears, and that scared me more than screaming would have. He opened the folder and flipped through the pages. Every screenshot, every list, every highlighted line laid out like a timeline. His jaw clenched, but he did not deny any of it. None of this is what you think, he said finally, each word pushed out. I almost laughed from the repetition, because I had heard that excuse one time too many. This is simple, I replied. There is someone else, there are hidden meetings, there is cash. You can dress it up however you want, I am done translating. His eyes closed for a moment, lashes trembling, then he looked at the hallway. Where are they, he asked. He meant the kids, not the documents. In their room, I answered, and you are not using them as shields tonight. I am not leaving them, he said, voice rising for the first time. Something in me hardened then, because I knew I had to push. You are leaving this house, I replied, or I call someone to help you out. He stared at me like he did not recognize the person across from him. Truthfully, I did not fully recognize her either, but I was not backing off. He grabbed a suitcase from the closet without arguing further. Clothes went in fast, no folding, just handfuls shoved down. He reached for the photo on the dresser, then stopped midair. His hand hovered, then dropped, fingers curling into a fist at his side. Watching him abandon that frame hurt more than I expected, and I hated that it did. In the hallway, he bent toward the kid's door. I stepped between him and the handle before he could turn it. They do not need to watch this yet, I said, guarding that threshold. They will know soon enough, he answered, eyes glassy, shoulders slumped. I shook my head and held my ground, because softening here would unravel the whole stance. At the front door, he paused with his bag at his feet. You are wrong about this, he managed, voice hoarse now. One day you will wish you asked better questions. The sentence landed like a curse, sharp and quiet and certain. I opened the door wider and waited until he stepped out into the night. When the lock slid back into place, my legs nearly buckled. The house was silent except for a cartoon playing faintly down the hall. I pressed my forehead against the wood and let out a shaky breath. I had wanted him gone for hours. Now that he was, the space he left felt massive. Still, there was a strange relief under the ache, like a drumbeat telling me to keep moving. I did not pour a drink or crawl onto the couch to cry. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to a name I should have deleted months earlier. Matt from my office, the one who always lingered a little too long at my desk. We had joked in messages, nothing that crossed the line fully. Until that night when I decided crossing lines was exactly the point. You still out, I wrote, I need distraction. The 3 dots appeared almost instantly, like he had been waiting. At Murphy S. Come by, he replied, no questions, no hesitation. His eagerness jolted something in me, half disgust, half grim satisfaction. If my life was already scorched, I might as well light my own match. I changed clothes quickly, not for him, more like armor. Jeans, plain top, hair pulled back in a rushed knot. Every move felt deliberate, like I was building a new version of myself. I checked the kids once more, tucking blankets around small shoulders. For 5 seconds I considered staying, then walked out anyway. Driving over, the streets blurred into one long strip of motion. I replayed the argument with Evan in pieces, editing my own lines. In some versions I shouted more, in others I backed down less. None of those rewrites changed the fact that his bag was gone. That detail sat in my chest like a heavy stone the whole ride. Murphy's buzzed with low noise when I walked in. Matt lifted his chin from a booth, eyes lighting up at the sight of me. You okay? He asked as I slid into the seat across from him. No, I answered, that is kind of the point. He looked at me for a beat, then reached over and covered my hand with his. We talked in short bursts, nothing deep, just surface noise. Work, office gossip, the game playing on the television. It felt like holding a bandage over a wound still bleeding hard. At some point his knee brushed mine under the table and did not move away. I noticed every inch of contact, like my skin had suddenly woken up. "Do you want to get out of here?" he asked finally. His eyes flicked toward the door, then back to my face. I heard every warning bell in my head and ignored each one. "Yeah," I answered, voice steady in a way it did not deserve to be. I stood up first, leaving cash on the table, stepping into a choice I had once sworn never to make. Behind the building, the air felt colder and sharper. He leaned in, hand on my waist, breath close against my cheek. I let him kiss me without pulling back, without even closing my eyes at first. Some part of me watched from outside, stunned by how easy it was. The rest of me leaned forward, chasing anything that was not hurt for just a minute. His mouth moved against mine, insistent and hungry. My fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer than I should have. For a moment there was nothing except heat and contact, and a surge of reckless energy. Then an image of Evan bending toward the kid's door flashed through my mind. Guilt slammed into me so hard I tasted it, sour and immediate. I broke away, turning my face to the side, breathing fast. "Too much," I muttered, wiping my lips with the back of my hand. "You sure?" he asked, brow drawn, hands hovering near my shoulders. "I just threw my marriage off a cliff tonight," I answered, voice rough. Apparently I am not as numb as I thought. He offered to drive behind me to make sure I got home. I declined, already reaching for my keys like they were a lifeline. The ride back felt longer, every red light an accusation. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my stomach churned with more than adrenaline. I had wanted to hurt Evan, but walking inside, I realized I had carved something out of myself too. I checked the kids again and stood there longer than before. Their faces were peaceful, oblivious to everything I had set in motion. I knew that would not last. Soon lawyers and schedules and whispered conversations would replace this calm. I backed out of the room, knowing I had passed the point where any truth from him could fix what I had just done. The banging on the front door jolted me upright before the alarm. My neck screamed from sleeping half twisted, still in yesterday's clothes. For a second I thought Evan had come back to pound the frame down. Then a child yelled from the hallway, and the knocking came again, sharper. Whatever waited outside was not going away on its own. "Stay in your room," my voice snapped down the hallway. Small feet retreated, a door clicked, silence followed. I wiped my face with both hands and walked to the entryway. The peephole showed shapes, dark uniforms, badges catching a sliver of light. My pulse spiked so fast I struggled with the lock. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood on the porch. One held a small notepad, the other watched my face too closely. "Are you Catherine Lewis?" His tone was steady, not friendly. My fingers tightened on the edge of the door until they hurt. Any answer besides yes would have sounded ridiculous. I nodded once. "Is your husband here?" The taller one glanced past me into the house. I shook my head, throat suddenly dry, mind jumping to worse scenarios. Had he crashed somewhere, been arrested, hurt someone? I had wanted consequences, but not like this. "When did you last see him?" The other officer shifted his stance. "Last night," my voice came out hoarse like it belonged to someone else. "Is he in trouble?" The question escaped before I could stop it. They exchanged a quick look that made my stomach churn. "We are trying to locate him and another individual." The one with the notepad flipped a page. "Do you know a woman named Margaret Hayes?" The name landed with no recognition at all, just strange syllables. I shook my head again, slower this time, confusion edging into fear. Every woman's name I had imagined suddenly felt childish. "Maybe a photo will help." He pulled out a printout in a clear sleeve. A tired face stared back at me, lines around the mouth, wary eyes. I studied her, searching for any link to our world. "I have never seen her," I said, hearing how thin that sounded. They watched me like they were weighing every twitch. "Your husband's phone records show repeated contact with this woman." That sentence hit me like a slap I had expected and still hated. "We are following up because there is an active case involving her." Active case. Those 2 words cut through my outrage in a way nothing else had. The taller officer pointed his pen toward the street. Has anyone unusual been around here? Cars parked for long stretches. I thought of the messages about not coming near the house. The instructions to avoid the front, to stick to side entrances. Everything I had read twisted in my mind in a new shape. I work from home most days, I answered, choosing each word. I noticed things, nothing like that recently. The word recently did a lot of work, considering the week I had just lived. He jotted something down, eyes flicking up now and then. I could feel him trying to decide whether I was lying. Did your husband mention any threats, anyone following him? I almost laughed at that, a sharp humorless sound caught in my chest. He had mentioned nothing, that was the whole problem. No, he kept plenty to himself though. Their faces did not change, but something in the air cooled. The shorter one adjusted his belt, then aired his voice. We cannot share many details, but there has been harassment involving her ex-partner. My brain snagged on that phrase, the way he stressed ex-partner. This man has ignored boundaries and may escalate, we are trying to prevent that. The words harassment and escalate settled under my skin like splinters. He handed me a card. If your husband contacts you, have him reach out immediately. I took it with numb fingers, eyes fixed on the printed number. Part of me wanted to throw it and slam the door. The other part wanted to call right then and demand the missing story. One more thing, the officer hesitated, then continued. Has anyone besides your family had access to this residence lately? I flashed on Matt's hand at my back, that rushed exit behind the bar. Just relatives and one babysitter, I answered, hating how easily the lie came. He studied my face for a beat longer than felt comfortable. They walked back to their cruiser, boots thudding on the concrete. I stayed in the doorway until they drove off, card pinched tight. My heart hammered against my ribs like it wanted to break free. Behind me, a small voice called my name, nervous and high. I shut the door gently, like sudden moves might bring the officers back. Everything okay? Big eyes stared up at me from the hallway. Just some questions about a neighbor, I improvised, forcing my mouth to bend. Go finish your show, I will be right there. They hesitated, searching my face, then turned and wandered off. Lying to cops felt heavy, lying to my kids felt worse. Once they were out of sight, I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. I opened the folder of screenshots, thumb flying through each image. There it was, a case number I had barely registered. Terms like violation and hearing that I had skimmed right over. My narrative about hotel sheets and cheap affairs suddenly looked flimsy. I typed out a text to Evan, erased it, tried again. Cops came by, asking about you and a woman named Margaret Hayes. I stared at the words, then hit send before fear could stop me. The response did not come as text. My screen lit with an incoming call almost immediately. I answered on the first vibration. Did you tell them anything? His voice crashed through the speaker raw. My jaw clenched at the command buried in that question. They asked if I had seen her, I told them no, I replied. Maybe start with why they know your name and a stranger's together. He drew in a harsh breath, the kind that sounds like someone bracing. Did they say where they were headed next? They wanted you to contact them, something about a situation with her ex. The phrase tasted wrong in my mouth after everything I had believed. On his end, silence stretched long and tight. Evan, who is she? I sank into a chair, knees suddenly weak. I am done guessing, either tell me or I take that card back to the station. I meant it. For the first time, involving strangers felt less dramatic than what I had already done. Seconds ticked by, each one heavier than the last. When he finally spoke, it sounded like he had run out of room to dodge. She is family. The word hit the air between us and hung there. You do not have a sister, I shot back instantly. I had met every relative he had ever claimed. Holidays, weddings, endless gatherings, never once a Margaret. I do, he answered, voice low now, just not the way you think. I heard movement around him, maybe a door closing, maybe footsteps. We share a father, different mothers, we lost contact for years. The timeline snapped something in my head, but I bit my tongue. He was finally talking, I was not going to stall him with shock. She called me last year out of nowhere, he continued. She was trying to get away from someone who scares her. My fingers dug crescents into my leg as he spoke. The words last year turned my stomach because this was all new to me. He had been carrying this for months while I slept inches away. I pushed past the ache clawing at my throat. Why the hotels, why the cash, why hide it like an affair? He exhaled slowly, the sound shredded at the edges. Because he tracks her through usual channels, cards, addresses, social media. She needed places he could not predict and payments he could not trace. The officer's warning replayed in my head, blended with his explanation. Harassment, escalation, that is what they said, I murmured more to myself. I imagined some shadow figure scanning statements, following digital crumbs. For a moment, the picture shifted away from adultery toward something uglier. Then the memory of those late messages yanked me back. You wrote you loved her, I reminded him, voice barely above a whisper. It sounded childish as soon as I said it, but I could not let it go. Of course I told her that, he replied, frustration breaking through. She calls me shaking, hiding in bathrooms, she thinks he might kai. LL hurt. If I cannot say I love her in those moments, what am I even doing? My lungs forgot how to work for a second. I had not pictured fear in those exchanges, only stolen excitement. Why keep her a secret from me? I asked, every word heavy. I would have helped, I am not made of glass. The answer that came changed more than I wanted to admit. Because you are married to me, he said quietly. Because if he finds out about my family, he finds out about you and the kids. Because the more people who know where she is, the more ways he can get to her. I thought of the file I had blasted out to half the family the day before. Each forwarded screenshot now looked like a gift basket delivered to the wrong address. I told your mom, your brother, my sister. I forced the confession out, each name like another blow. On his end, there was no sound at all for a moment. Then a short, bitter laugh, nothing like the one I used to love. Of course you did, he muttered. You weaponized it before you understood it. Heat rose up my neck, shame mixing with leftover anger. You were lying to me, I snapped, grabbing for any defense left. I was trying to keep a woman alive, he shot back. The contrast in those two statements sliced through my justifications. I felt suddenly very small in my own kitchen. What about the line about not coming near the house? I pushed on. The one that had hurt most, the one that had made me feel like a nuisance. That was about him, Evan answered immediately, not about you. He has followed her before. I told her never to meet me anywhere near where you and the kids sleep. Hearing the actual target of that sentence made something inside me buckle. I stared at the card the officer had given me, thumb rubbing the corner raw. The room around me blurred, sounds muffled by the rush in my ears. All the assurance I had clung to over the last 2 days crumbled. In its place grew something uglier than rage. The awareness that I had not just misread things, I had acted on that misreading. Evan, my voice came out unsteady, the first crack in my armor. I told the lawyer you were cheating. Saying it plain like that felt like pouring acid straight onto my own hands. Of course you did, he repeated, no humor this time. What else have you set in motion that I do not know about? Images flashed through my mind in sharp bursts. Matt behind the bar, his hand on my waist, my own lips moving. I swallowed hard, the confession lodging in my throat like a stone. Cowardice won in that moment, I let the silence stand. I chose to reveal only the parts that made me look righteous. On his end I heard faint chatter, like he was near other people. I have to go, he said, they are waiting for me at the precinct. Are you safe? I asked, the question slipping out before pride could stop it. Another pause, then a quieter answer. For now I cannot say the same for us. The call ended, leaving me alone with the hum of the fridge and my thoughts. I looked around at the scattered papers, the half-empty mug, the folder of copied messages. It all suddenly resembled a crime board put together by someone using the wrong case file. I had aimed every piece at a cheating husband and hit something completely different. The worst part was knowing that even with the new story, the damage I had done to us was very real. I dragged the thick envelope across the table hard enough to scrape it. He watched it move between us, fingers laced, knuckles pale. You wanted me to know everything, I said, throat tight. Then put it in writing. He pushed his own file toward me like we were trading weapons. I tore his open first because curiosity beat pride. On top sat a stamped petition, my husband's name beside a stranger's. Words like protective order and imminent risk jumped off the page. The case code matched the one from his messages exactly. That tiny match made my stomach drop harder than any hotel confirmation. He waited while I skimmed, jaw clenched, eyes flat. There were dated entries from officers documenting called-in incidents. Notes about late-night visits from a man who would not leave. Lines describing threats shouted through doors, recorded by neighbors. Every sentence was a rebuttal to the story I had invented. "You filed this months ago," I managed, voice rough. He nodded once, no triumph in his face, just exhaustion. "I tried to handle it quietly," he answered, shoulders sagging. "A few people knew, you were not one of them." The way he said that last part hurt more than the paperwork. I flipped deeper and hit photos of cracked drywall and bruised arms. A woman's profile appeared in several shots, half turned away. I recognized the wary eyes from the printout the officers had shown me. She looked older than her messages had sounded in my head. She looked like someone who had lived with fear as a roommate. "Why keep this from me?" I asked, finger tap. "Ping a date. Why build this whole secret life around it?" He stared at the ceiling for a moment, like searching for patience. "I kept it from you to keep him from you," he answered finally. "Every extra person who knows where she hides becomes another way he can find her." I wanted to fight that logic, call it dramatic or controlling. Instead, I thought of the mass text I had fired off in anger. His mom, his brother, my sister, the lawyer. All holding copies of messages that named hotels and vague locations. I suddenly felt like I had been mailing out maps to a bomb shelter. I slid my own folder across, not trusting myself to speak yet. He opened it and saw my lists, the highlighted transactions, the tracked nights. His mouth tightened, but he kept turning pages steadily. When he reached the screen grabs of his chats, he paused. "You printed everything," he murmured, thumb resting on one line about meeting times. "I thought you were lying to my face," I said, leaning forward. "I thought you were sneaking around while I put kids to bed." He closed the folder, pressing the edges together with both hands. "You did more than think," he answered, looking up at me now. "You decided I was already guilty and built your case from there. There was no point pretending otherwise, so I did not. I contacted an attorney," I admitted, pulse racing. "I started asking about splitting assets, about custody schedules." His eyelids fluttered shut for a second, shoulders tight. "Before you ever asked for the full story," he said quietly, more statement than question. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. Unlocked it, opened the secure app I had snooped through at night. Then he slid it to my side of the table. "Read the last thread," he said, "the one from yesterday afternoon." I hesitated, then picked it up with hands that did not feel steady. The messages showed her name spelled out, not just an initial. Short bursts, panicked. He waited outside my job again. "I used the back exit," he circled twice. "Please tell me you are still helping, I cannot run forever." His replies were there too, written in the same deliberate tone I knew. "I am still here. I moved funds already. Police know, stay in public until we meet. Do not come near my family's address, it is not safe for them if he connects us." That last line had been the one I twisted hardest in my head. Seeing it again in context made my chest constrict. My imagined mistress vanished, replaced with a woman expecting him to keep his word. A woman who had no idea his own house was imploding over her name. My reflection stared back from the dark screen as those realities collided. "You never told her what was happening with us," I realized out loud. He shook his head, palms up, like there was nothing left to hide. "She has enough on her plate," he answered. "Her crisis is not about my marriage imploding because I was trying to shield her." He dragged a hand over his face slowly, as if wiping off the weak. We fell quiet while some barista called orders behind us. Normal life went on 3 feet away, while mine rearranged itself again. "Why not show me this sooner?" I finally asked, softer now. "Before lawyers, before broken phones, before all of this." His answer told me we were not walking back from this cliff. "Because the second you smashed my phone, I realized something," he said. "You did not come to me with doubts, you came with a verdict. If I had told you then, you would have seen whatever fit your theory." I waited because part of me still hoped you would ask instead of prosecute. He let out a humorless breath. You went to my mother first. Shame lodged under my ribs, sharp and relentless. I was terrified, I said, fingers twisting in my lap. I knew something huge was happening that I had not been trusted with. He shrugged one shoulder, eyes dropping to the table. You were right about not being trusted, just wrong about why. The urge to confess, everything pressed against my tongue. Murphy the parking lot, his coworker's mouth on mine. I pictured laying it all out between us alongside the police reports. Watching his last bit of respect evaporate on the spot. Cowardice dug its heels in again and the words stayed caged. Instead I heard myself say, I am sorry, in a bare whisper. Not just for the calls or the screenshots or the texts. For every tiny choice that stacked into this avalanche. It sounded small, thin, nowhere near enough. His expression told me he agreed. I believe you regret it, he replied eventually, staring at his hands. I do not know if that changes anything going forward. The phrase going forward punched air from my lungs. I had braced for anger, not this muted distance. He sounded like he was talking about a colleague, not a wife. He glanced at the envelope again, then back at me. The therapist your lawyer recommended reached out, he said. She has an opening tomorrow if we both show up. The idea of unpacking this in front of a stranger made me nauseous. Still, I nodded because the alternative was signing papers without one last attempt. We walked out together but not side by side. On the sidewalk he stopped, shifting his weight like he wanted to say more. Whatever happens, we need to keep this away from them, he said, meaning the kids. At least until we have actual decisions instead of explosions. I agreed, although my last explosion was still sitting unsaid in my chest. The therapist's office was smaller than I expected, cramped but neat. She introduced herself, motioned us to sit, then looked between us. Who wants to start? She asked, folding her hands. Neither of us moved for a beat, silence stretching tight. Finally I exhaled and took the hit. I accused him of something that was not true, I began. I went through his devices, I collected information, I shared it. The words tasted like metal, unpolished and sharp. I involved people who did not belong in our fight yet. I did not mention the man behind the bar, though his ghost hovered. Evan stared straight ahead, eyes rimmed red but dry. When she felt suspicious, she chose a jury before a conversation, he said. There were lawyers in the mix before I even knew what day we were on. By the time I could finally tell her about my sister, she had already punished me for cheating. The word sister hit like a quiet hammer in that small room. The counselor listened, asked targeted questions, took occasional notes. She framed things in phrases like broken safety and fractured trust. At one point she looked at me directly. What would it take for you to trust him with hard truths again? She asked. I opened my mouth and realized I did not have an honest answer. When she turned to him, his response cut deeper than any accusation. I am not sure I want her in that role right now, he said. I am not sure my first thought during a crisis should be, will my wife destroy me over this? His voice did not rise, which somehow made each word land heavier. I could not argue because my own behavior had proved his point. After the session, we walked to the parking lot without speaking. Near his car, he paused and rubbed the back of his neck. I will continue to come for a while, he said, eyes on the asphalt. For the kids, for closure, I do not know about reconciliation yet. Each phrase felt like a door closing halfway and staying there. My phone buzzed that evening while I chopped vegetables mechanically. Unknown number, short message. Hi, this is Margaret, he said I could reach out. My grip tightened on the knife, breath stalling. For a second I considered ignoring it, pretending the contact never happened. Curiosity won. Hi, this is his wife, I replied, fingers heavy on the screen. Dots blinked, then her next text arrived. I am sorry for everything my situation pulled him into. I know it must have caused chaos for you. She followed with another message before I could respond. He never told me details, only that things were strained at home. He did not want me to feel guilty for asking him to help. Reading that, my eyes burned in a way that had nothing to do with onions. He had protected her from my fury while I dismantled his reputation. I typed out a response 3 times and erased it each time. I wanted to write, I thought you were sleeping with him. I wanted to write, I kissed someone else while he moved you between safe rooms. Instead I sent, I am glad you are getting support, because anything real felt radioactive. She thanked me with a string of words that made me feel like a fraud. Later that night, the kids asleep, the house still, I opened a new text to Evan. The screen glowed, waiting, cursor blinking like a pulse. I need to tell you something about that night after you left, I wrote. I stared at the sentence until my eyes blurred. Then I deleted every letter and set the phone face down, letting the secret poison linger. I gripped the pen so hard the plastic creaked. The stack of forms sat in front of me, waiting for ink. Across the table, Evan's signature already filled his lines. The attorney slid one more page toward me with a practiced motion. All I had to do was sign and turn us into paperwork. Whenever you are ready, her voice stayed neutral, almost gentle. My hand hovered over the final line, arms suddenly heavy. Evan stared at the corner of the table, jaw set tight. No one moved to rush me, which somehow made it worse. I pressed the tip down and signed before I could think. The sound of the pen scratching felt louder than it should. I dotted the last letter and lifted my hand fast. The attorney flipped the page over and checked the boxes. That is it, the court will finalize everything this week. Just like that, my marriage fit inside a thin manila file. Outside her office, we ended up next to each other by the elevator. We both reached for the button and pulled back at the same time. You can go, I said, stepping aside with my hands in my pockets. He pressed it once, then looked at the floor instead of me. The numbers above the door seemed more interesting than my face. When the doors opened, we stepped in without speaking. Our reflections stood side by side in the brushed metal. We looked like coworkers after a hard meeting, not former partners. He cleared his throat once, low, like words wanted out. They stayed locked behind his teeth until we reached the lobby. We walked toward opposite exits automatically, then stopped. Drop off at my place tonight, he asked, rubbing his temple. Works, I answered, fingers already tugging at my bag strap. He nodded once, then headed for the parking lot without turning back. The distance between us felt measured in more than a few steps. That evening, the kids ran ahead of me toward his car. He crouched to hug them, arms wrapping tight around both. They talked over each other about school and friends and snacks. I hung back near the curb, holding their overnight backpacks. For a second, no one looked in my direction at all. When they finally climbed in, I handed him the bags. We have that teacher meeting next Thursday, I said. I can switch nights if that helps. He scrolled through his phone calendar, thumb moving quickly. Leave it as is, I will make it work, he answered, still not meeting my eyes. He closed the door and walked around the front of the car. Halfway to the driver's side, he paused and turned a little. They keep asking why we live in two places now, he said. They ask me too, I replied, swallowing hard. I tell them grown-ups sometimes cannot fix things, even when they want to. He studied me for a beat, expression unreadable. Do you believe that? He asked, voice quiet but sharp. I opened my mouth, then shut it again. Some parts we could have fixed, some we had shattered on purpose. He waited for an answer I did not give, then got in and drove away. Weeks blurred into handoffs and school emails and shared calendars. We talked about field trips and dentist visits and lost shoes. Our conversations stayed in that safe zone, efficient and bland. Every once in a while, he would glance at me longer than necessary. Those quick scans felt like assessments, not affection. I saw Margaret in person for the first time at a coffee shop. Evan texted that she wanted to meet and thank me. I almost said no, then agreed because avoidance had built enough damage. She arrived alone, shoulders straight, eyes cautious. I recognized the woman from the police pictures, but standing on her own feet. Thanks for coming, she shifted her bag strap higher. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. We stood there for a second, two strangers linked by chaos. I wanted to apologize, she said, fingers twisting her sleeve. All of this started with me needing his help. It started with him choosing not to tell me, I answered. The words came out sharper than I planned, but I did not pull them back. Her shoulders dropped a little, not defensive, just tired. He was trying to keep us out of the same blast radius, she replied. Looks like that did not work for anyone. We sat, each with a drink, neither of us touched much. I did not know you thought it was an affair, she said. If he had told me that, I might have backed off. He did tell you things were rough at home though, I countered. Her silence there said enough. I heard the way he talked about you, she added after a moment. It was never like someone sneaking around. He was guilty, I cut in, leaning forward. Just not of the thing I went after. Owning that out loud felt like tearing a bandage off slow. She looked down at her hands, then back up. I know what it is like to look for danger everywhere, she said. I lived that way for years. You saw patterns and thought you were protecting yourself. I was destroying myself, I corrected, the word landing heavy between us. I still am if I am honest. She watched me for a long breath. Have you told him everything, she asked. My mind jumped straight to the alley behind the bar. My ribs seemed to tighten around my lungs. Not yet, I admitted, tasting the cowardice. Secrets eat people, she said quietly, gaze steady. I have watched that happen up close, it never ends well. I know, I answered, eyes burning. I just do not know if telling him now is help or cruelty. Both options felt like traps. When we parted, she hugged me briefly. It surprised me enough that my arms moved late. Whatever happens with you two, he is a good brother, she said. I am sorry you had to find out that way. I walked away feeling like I had been forgiven by the wrong person. The confession finally came on a random Tuesday. No anniversary, no holiday, just a regular exchange in a parking lot. He buckled the kids into his backseat while they chattered. I waited with my hands deep in my jacket pockets. The words had been pressing against my ribs for months. After they settled, he closed the door and turned toward me. Anything else I need to know about the recital, he asked. There is something else you should know about that first night, I blurted. The sentence jumped out before I could smooth it. His posture changed instantly, shoulders tightening with that old wary look. He leaned against the car, arms folding across his chest. What now, he asked, voice level but edged. I stared at the pavement near his shoes, then forced myself to look up. When you left with the suitcase, I did not stay home, I said. I met someone from work and I crossed a line. His face did not move at first. No outrage, no shock, just a stillness that scared me more. What line, he asked, though we both knew. I let him kiss me, I said. I let it happen on purpose because I wanted you to hurt. The air between us felt suddenly thin. He blinked once slowly, then again faster. So while I was checking in on hotels for her, you were making out behind a bar, he said. He spoke it like a report, not an accusation. That tone cut deeper than shouting would have. I did not sleep with him, I added, hating how weak it sounded. He laughed once short, not amused. That is your defense, he asked, technicalities. I shook my head, throat thick. There is no defense, I just needed you to know exactly how far I went. He looked past me for a long moment, jaw working. When did you decide to tell me, he asked finally. I started typing the message the night we signed, I answered. I deleted it and kept deleting it for weeks. I got tired of hearing my own excuses. He nodded slowly, eyes still fixed somewhere over my shoulder. Thank you for telling me, he said after a beat. The words did not sound forgiving. They sounded like someone reading a statement into a record. Relief and grief hit me at the same time. So that is everything, he added, pushing off the car. You have the full picture now. I wanted to argue that there was more, layers of fear and insecurity. None of that mattered in the face of what we had actually done. Our actions had already spoken loud enough. He opened the driver's door, then paused again. I meant what I told the therapist, he said without looking up. I cannot treat you like the person I go to first in a crisis. Not after this combination of spying and revenge. It was blunt and it was fair. I watched his car pull away until it turned out of sight. Back inside my place, the quiet felt different than before. Not like punishment anymore, more like consequence. I sat at the table and opened my messages with Jenna. For the first time since it started, I told her everything, including the kiss. Her reply came fast. That is ugly, she wrote, but it is done. You can either keep trying to justify or you can learn from it. I stared at that last sentence for a long time. Learning sounded less dramatic than punishment, but harder in its own way. Co-parenting forced us into regular contact, like it or not. We stood side by side at school events, clapped at the same moments. Sometimes our arms brushed when both kids reached for us mid-crowd. We always stepped back a fraction without talking about it. Boundaries built out of habits instead of love. There were small flashes that hurt more than big arguments. Watching him adjust our son's tie before a performance. Seeing our daughter climb into his lap during a movie night at his place. Hearing them call his apartment the other home without flinching. Those were the moments where my choices stood tallest. One afternoon, drop-off ran late and we ended up alone on the porch. Rain hit the railing hard enough that we had to raise our voices. He stood half inside the doorway, keeping an eye on the hallway. "They are handling this better than I expected," he said. "They are handling it better than we are," I replied. He almost smiled at that, a quick twitch that vanished. "We are doing our best," he answered. I tilted my head, really looking at him for the first time that day. "We did not do our best back then," I said. "Now we are just dealing with the fallout." He studied my face for a second like he might argue. Then he nodded once, acceptance rather than agreement. "I know my secrets played a part," he said. "I also know you launched a missile before you knew what you were aiming at." Both truths sat there heavy, and neither of us tried to lighten them. I reached for the doorframe, fingers brushing the wood. "If another woman ever calls you with that kind of story," I said, "I hope you still help her, I just hope you tell whoever you are with." He looked surprised at that, eyebrows lifting slightly. Growth looks strange when it finally shows up. He exhaled through his nose, then gave a sure nod. "If anyone ever accuses you again," he answered, "I hope they ask for context first." That line landed softer than the others. There was no promise in it, just a wish. We stood there in the doorway, two people who understood each other too late. I live alone now between shared weeks and school schedules. No secret apps on my devices, no hidden bank withdrawals. I double-check myself whenever I start filling gaps with worst-case stories. If I cannot ask the question out loud, I know I am not ready for any answer. That little rule has saved me from my own imagination more than once. Sometimes at night when the kids are at his place, the house goes very still. I replay the moment with the mug and the phone. I can feel the impulse in my arm again, that sharp, reckless swing. Back then, it felt like the only power I had. Now I see it as the first domino in a line I never meant to set up. I do not tell this to make myself look sympathetic. I am not the wronged heroine who discovered a shocking twist. I am the woman who saw half a picture and fired every gun in the room. The sister in this story was never the threat. I was, and I proved it every step of the way. If there is anything worth taking from this mess, it is small. You can walk out if someone betrays you, that is your right. Just make sure you know what they actually did before you burn everything down. Anger feels righteous when you are in it, blinding and hot and sure. Standing in the ashes years later, that certainty is the part that haunts you.